Yes, hello. Welcome to the Best on Ground. A bit of a special episode today. Not the Best on Ground weekday kickoff, but it's a bit of Bledisloe banter. Yes, we're looking ahead to the third Bledisloe Cup test between the Wallabies and the All Blacks at ANZ Stadium this Saturday. My name's Pete Fairbairn. I'm your host, joined by Suncorp Stadium Media Hall of Famer Jim Tucker. How are you, Jim?
Oh, that's a lofty title. Just a battler, but loving Bledisloe week.
And of course doing some fantastic work with rugby.com.au at the moment as well. And dialing in from France, we've got former Melbourne Rebels and Queensland Reds captain, Super Rugby centurion. I won't tell you how many Wallabies caps he's won because, in my humble opinion, it's certainly not enough, but that's a story for another day. Scott Higginbotham in Bordeaux. How are you, my friend?
Pete, yeah, I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me. And Jim, good to see you.
Great to have you on the show. We're going to walk through a few different storylines of the game, coming up tomorrow night. We're also going to have a look at the club rugby finals, in Sydney and Brisbane this weekend. And then finally, touch a little bit on life in Bordeaux during a pandemic, because there's plenty happening there for you, Higgers. But let's start with the game. And the teams being announced yesterday and a few Wallaby debutants there. We've got Noah Lolosio at 10, Ire Simone at 12, and then Fraser McWright and Tate McDermott on the bench. James O'Connor, of course, goes out with a knee injury. Matt Tamura out with a groin injury as well. For the All Blacks, well, they've got the back line remaining intact, but they've got Hoskins Tutu coming in at 8. Karl Tuinu Kufa. Oh, goodness, I've absolutely butchered that. Karl Tuinu Ukufuahi coming in at loosehead prop. I'm going to get a lot of grief for that. And Sam Whitelock at starting lock for the All Blacks. Let's talk about the Wallaby debutants first and foremost. Jim, I'll start with you. Lolosio at 10 and Ire Simone at 12. Talk me through the baptism of fire for those two young men.
Well, I think the greatest thing to say is that they'll get to do it together, like Brumbies players at halfback, number 10, and also inside centre. So I think that coalition, they'll get a lot of steadiness just from playing together. And I'm talking about Nick White, Lolosio and Simone, who did some really good things for the Brumbies. I like the fact that Lolosio doesn't have to do everything himself, because Simone, part of his package is that he can do a bit of everything. He can cut the ball up well if he's in a tricky situation. He can kick himself quite nicely, and he can ball play a bit. So he's got a nice package. But again, test debut, and Lolosio test debut. But we saw right from the start of this Super Rugby season that Noah had a really good chat about him. He directed far older players around him. He's got a passing game. And part of this against the All Blacks will be not overplaying his hand, just getting everyone into the game and moving the pieces around. So quite excited, but huge step up. Like the pace of the game is just so much more than Super Rugby. So he's got a real strap your helmet on type game coming up. So exciting, but fingers crossed just the same.
Higgers, a couple of young men on the bench there that you would have spent some time with in the Queensland Reds environment. I think for both Fraser McWright and Tate McDermott, it's been considered a case of when, not if, they were going to break through and play for the Wallabies. Tell us a little bit about these guys and what they'll be able to bring to the international stage.
Yeah, I mean, they're both interesting ones. I mean, both fantastic talents. And, you know, it was pretty special to play with both of them in their early days. Tatey first, I mean, he's just so rapid. You know, his pace with the ball is second to none. So that'll be interesting, I think, seeing how that goes at test level, if he can do, I guess, have that same impact with that speed and be able to find those holes in the defence. And I think, look, Tate is just not Tate, sorry. Fraser's, I mean, he's an immense talent and just a fantastic player. He's got sort of the whole package. So, like you said, it was when as opposed to if. And look, he's a great young guy, and I really wish him the best. I know he'll give it all he's got, which is exactly what he did for the Reds this year.
And another young man who, just quickly, Jim, sorry, another young man who's come through that Reds team and has spoken about the influence you've had on him is Harry Wilson, who's already played a couple of tests now and looks right at home. You must have enjoyed seeing him throwing his considerable size around in that number 8 jersey.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to be replaced that quickly, isn't it? I don't know how to feel about it, to be honest, you know. at the Reds. But look, he's you know, I'd like to say I had a bit more of an impact on his actual playing career, but I really haven't. I mean, he's just a natural footballer. I mean, I really enjoy the way he plays. He likes to have a go and I suppose do things that other back rowers in Super Rugby can't do, which is, you know, the flick passes and the bit of the kicking and whatnot, which you know, I don't mind myself. So I really like the way he plays. And look, he's just, yeah, he's really fitted in and then slotted into that test level football, you know, seamlessly, which is exactly what he did at Super Rugby. So look, he's gonna be there for a long time, I think, you know, and I think he'll hold that jersey and keep that position for a very long time, which is great for the Wallabies.
Scott, he's got that sort of makeup, Harry, where he's that link man with the backs, because he does run in that wide channel quite naturally and support little breaks, which is really significant for a number 8. But also, we're looking at the All Blacks. Hoskins Tutu, he's a monster who plays for the Blues, and he's a really significant player as well. Do you feel you're seeing just a real changing of the guard in this post-World Cup year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is. You look at the majority of the squad besides, you know, the few guys in there, obviously Slips, you know, still in there at prop, and James O'Connor, of course, coming back into that 10 jersey. I mean, you know, besides those, a couple of those key guys, Simo as well. I mean, everyone is just so young. I mean, the majority of the squad's probably 25 and under, and the All Blacks around that too. You know, it's really, I think, going to be an interesting dynamic in this next World Cup. It really will be, you know, because all these guys will have, you know, 3 years of Test footy under their belt, and I think, you know, it is going to be a real challenge, and I think Australia is really moving forward.
Some good stats I can give you on that one there, gents. The back line, 279 caps for the All Blacks, 106 for the Wallabies, which is only about 10 or so more than Aaron Smith by himself. In total, the Wallabies have got 640 caps, but if you take out Slips, Michael Hooper and Rob Simmons, you've got around the 440 mark compared to 840 for the All Blacks. So it's a pretty massive challenge there. If we look at the All Blacks backline for a minute, I'm just going to read it to you. Aaron Smith, Richie Mwanga, Caleb Clark, Jack Woodcue, Anton Leonard-Brown, Geordie Barrett, Bowden Barrett, and then on the bench you have TJ Perinara, Laumape, and Rico Ioane. That's a pretty compelling backline, isn't it? It's looking pretty dangerous on paper.
Oh, massively so. But, I mean, if you want to miss 40 tackles, you'll lose against the schoolboy side. I mean, that's as simple as the equation was in Auckland. The Wallabies have to find that ferocity and that smothering mentality they had in Wellington the week before. That changes the whole game. Like, I think Caleb Clark is a magnificent player for the All Blacks. But if you put a turnstile in front of him, he is going to beat 5 tackles and look like a mini Jonah Lomu. He's not Jonah Lomu. Lomu was 12 kilos heavier. He was 7 centimetres taller. Like, he was a massive human. Caleb Clark is a bloke you can tackle and you can bottle up. Not easily, mind you, but you can stop him. And the Wallabies have to do some really key things. We saw in Wellington, first up, Tom Banks hacked a kick down to halfway. Oh, surprise, surprise, it comes back and it's a try to the All Blacks in the first few minutes. That stuff can't go on in Sydney on Saturday night. They have to be better at their kicking and contest every time and put some hassle back on the All Blacks. One stat that I really like is when the Wallabies score first, they're sort of 50-50 in terms of wins against the All Blacks over this last dozen years or so. If the All Blacks score first, they've won something like 27 of the last 28 times against the Wallabies. So the All Blacks are no different to any other team. You put scoreboard pressure on, you hassle them, you make them uncomfortable, sometimes make them not score for 25 minutes. Nothing's changed on the scoreboard, but the All Blacks get anxious. So some of those key things have to be done because I think there's enough firepower in the Wallabies, using the short side as they've done cleverly, things like that.
Yeah, it's a cracking stat, Jimmy. And Higgers, if you look at the teams on paper, there are some areas where the Wallabies might have the edge. For example, in the front row, the Wallabies front row and the replacements as well. Your mate James Slipper's having a superb year and turning back the clock, and that might be one area where the Wallabies might be able to have a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there's definitely, especially a lot of beef in the front row for the Wallabies with obviously Taniela, Scotty CO being on the bench. Slips leading the way there. It's a bit of a struggle, I think, for the forwards, just in terms of, I suppose, the experience is what can, especially in the lock position, I think is a tough one for the Wallabies. Simo's obviously the most experienced lock there, and he's on the bench. There's obviously, I think he's in there and working with, those Matt Phillip and Luke Hahn, through training, trying to get them, I suppose, a bit more knowledge into those guys before Simo heads off overseas. But, I think that's the only sort of tough bit for the Wallabies is in that forward spot. They definitely have the size and the skill, but just the experience, I think, is what they're lacking.
That's a good segue into my next question, and I'll ask Jim, you answer first, and then Higgers, you jump in, and I might even give my own opinion. If you could bring in any player into the 23, let's do one from within the current squad who's not in the 23, but also one from anywhere in the world, and that's not a reflection on where you play them and who they might replace, but just the impact they might be able to have if you were to bring in a player from within that squad into the 23 and also one from somewhere else in the world.
Okay, well, he's carrying a bit of a shoulder, sadly, but Rory Arnold I'd bring in just to definitely stiffen up the line out and a bit more dynamism there. And you'd even have Adam Coleman, really. So strengthening the lock position would be significant. I think Dave Rennie's picked really good talent Australia-wide, so I've got no issues with what he's got domestically. I think he's done a really sharp job, and he had an option, you have to admit, to not pick specialists for this game. Maybe sort of do a bit of a juggle of positions, but he's gone, okay, Bledisloe's 20, but he's a fly half, so I'm going to play him at number 10. Bang. Jordi Patea is a number 13, so I'm going to play him at outside centre. There's not that, we'll try and get by with Hunter Paisami at inside centre, which is not his natural spot, but and try and glue it together with a bit of fingers crossed. He hasn't done that. Sadly, that became a bit of a Michael Checker thing where he tried to put utilities on the wing. Got value, but there were also little downsides and tried to juggle too much in the back row sometimes and didn't quite get a combination together. So I think there's some. I'm comfortable, but a big lock would make a big difference, I think, for the Wallabies, just depth-wise.
Higgers, how about you, mate?
Yeah, mate. I actually Jim stole my answer. To be fair, I think the lock position. I think Rory Arnold is he'd be great. Alongside Luke Hahn there. That's two pretty aggressive locks. I think he's definitely missed, and that also adds a bit more size too. I think the height of Rory Arnold makes a difference to the line out. You could see that when he was playing for the Wallabies. And then I think in terms of I think there's possibly a bit biased, but I would have liked to have seen Caden Neville in the squad. I think he played some great football this year and really came into his own. Doing his job, and I think what he was asked to do at the Brumbies. And I suppose instead of when he was at the Reds, maybe playing a bit of six and playing a bit of lock here and there, he was a lock. He had a job to do, and I think he did that job really well. So I think he deserved definitely a spot in the squad. So yeah, that's probably the two for me.
Very nice indeed. For me, Pete Samu is a guy who is a winner. He wins at the Crusaders. He wins at the Brumbies. He's played well in that Wallabies jersey. I can't help but think that maybe he's not 100% fit to not be in the 23 because his versatility to cover anywhere in the back row, whether starting or coming off the bench. I would have loved to have seen him involved, and I hope we get an opportunity to maybe see Yassine Nassarani back in goal before the end of the year as well. If I'm looking overseas, I can't resist looking at someone like our old mate Samu Karevi and the impact he could have in that midfield as well. I think, trying to imagine a midfield of Karevi and Patea for the next 10 years would get most Wallabies fans excited. But, with you guys as well, I think, it's an exciting looking team that Dave Rennie's named. And there's a lot of pressure on a young team and a lot of expectation to look up to. But I think it's an exciting opportunity. Because you've played under a Kiwi Wallabies coach before, mate. Speaking of Dave Rennie, I wanted to know, does the nationality of your coach mean anything when you're playing for the Wallabies, or is it just about the quality of the coaching?
No, mate, I think it's just about the quality of the coaching, to be fair. I mean, I don't think I realised how, I suppose, good a coach Robbie Deans was at the particular age I was when I was in that Wallaby squad. I mean, I think I sort of realised a bit more later, I suppose, what he was trying to do and what he was trying to get across, and especially how he was trying to, I suppose, manage me. I mean, I was young and it was a tough squad, I think, at the time when Robbie was coached too. There was this sort of level of older guys and this level of really young guys, Quady, Rabs and myself, Slips. It was just such a difference in age group. And I think that's really hard for any coach. But I think, look, Kiwi or Australian or whatever, I think it doesn't matter. It's just about the quality of the coaching.
Jim, you had a thought that you put through last night as well, that you wanted to speak briefly about Steve Hansen and the fact that he's signed on as a coaching consultant for the Canterbury Bulldogs, which is a bit of a surprise. In general, do you think his skill set and his experience will be transferable across from rugby union into the 13-man code?
I think it will, because it's not Steve Hansen coaching dummy half play or anything like that as a rugby league coach. He's going to be coaching the coaches. He'll be a great sounding board for Trent Barrett. He'll be giving him ideas about how to get the group together, how some of the sensible values that all footy teams have. Culture, it's an overused word, but it's so important. And the Bulldogs have been a basket case at various times in recent years. And he'll just bring everything a bit tighter together. He'll coach the coaches. He'll coach some of the management in the front office. He's got a great mana, which is a fantastic word that the Kiwis use for just that aura around him. And I hope the Bulldogs people really do absorb a lot of the standards he has. And he's an old copper, so he's not a softie. He really demands high standards. And I think you'll see that, even if there's a little video camera stuck in a chair sometime just to video what goes on in team meetings, I'm sure they'll get a lot of value out of it.
Now, Higgers, mate, talk us through life in Bordeaux into your second season now in the top 14. It looked like you guys were going to go all the way in your first season there, and then obviously COVID kind of put an end to that. But talk me through a little bit how you're getting on over there, how you're enjoying your rugby, and what it's like living on the other side of the world during a pandemic.
Hey, it's been interesting, to say the least. Coming over here was actually quite tough, to be honest. It was, and I've heard this from people, other people who have moved to France. The first 3 months is a really tough transition, and it is. There's a lot of paperwork over here. There's a lot of stuff you got to sort out, which you really don't know about, and it's just really it takes a long time to get settled. So, look, that was tough, but once we got settled over here, it was great. I think for the first, as I said, those 3 months, first 3 months I was here, I think I had 3 holidays. So, I was having a great time. Went to Spain a couple of times, went to Portugal. It's everything's so close, and that's kind of a bit of the carrot as to why you end up over here from Australia. But look, it was great initially, and then obviously COVID hit, and it was really tough because I suppose in terms of rugby, I mean we were we were going. I mean, we were top of the ladder. And as you know, like the seasons are really long over here. We had 9 games left, so it looked like we could have finished sort of top 1 or 2, which would have meant a semi-finals guaranteed spot. And UBB, who I play for over here, have never made a final. Or never made the top 6. So yeah, it would have been a really fantastic first year and really great for the club. But yeah, COVID had other plans, and we had a bit of isolation and living in an apartment in the city with a 2-year-old and not being able to really get outside too much was, there was a few life lessons in there. But look, to be honest, it brought us closer as a family. We spent so much time together for 2 months or however long we were in isolation that, yeah, we had a great routine. And there's not too many, I suppose, working dads or mums that get to spend that much time with their kids when they're that age. So, look, I've really enjoyed it, and I've really been able to relish the time I've been able to spend, with my wife and my son.
Mate, you're a former cafe owner. You must be disappointed in the French coffee, mate. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, Jim, I mean, you're right. There's not a lot of there's certainly not a lot of cafes over here, and I think the most disappointing thing is there's not a lot of breakfast. I mean, most of the cafes, and this is part of the French culture, it's maybe a croissant for breakfast, and then cafes open about 10:30, so you can't get a coffee before then anyway. So, but we were pretty fortunate, mate. We've got a lovely Irish lady who owns a cafe about 20 metres down the road. So we've been fortunate in that regard, and we've been able to get good coffee and good food.
You've obviously got Kane Douglas at Bordeaux with you as well, but there's a good smattering of Aussies across France. Have you been able to catch up with many of the Foreign Legion, and what's it like, being on the other side of the world and coming up against, a Hugh Pyle or a Mike Harris or, these types of guys who you're playing against on the other side of the world? It must be quite surreal.
Yeah, it's I think that's kind of the thing I like most about, not only playing in France, but playing in Japan, is you play these guys, these international or ex-international guys that are, you've watched, you might never have played against a Super Rugby. They might not have ever played Super Rugby, but, to play against them is really enjoyable and really fun. And there's always this good camaraderie between, I suppose, the foreigners over here. So, yeah, it's been really enjoyable. And, of course, the 2 blokes you mentioned, Mikey Harris and Hugh Pyle. I mean, Piley's just down at Bayonne. It's about a 2-hour drive. And Mikey's in Pau, which is... You're
right there, mate. We've lost you.
Oh, you still there?
Yeah, we got you, mate.
Oh, sorry, mate. I thought just switched off. Yeah, no, so, I mean, Mikey Harris is only an hour or so away in Pau, so I see those guys a bit. And, yeah, I mean, it's great. It's really an interesting thing to do. I mean, Mikey and I were just talking the other day. We were together at the Reds, and then we were together in Melbourne, and then we were catching up, in Tokyo, in Japan, and then now we're catching up in, Pau and, the southwest of France. I mean, it's pretty crazy, and that's kind of that's the cool thing about rugby, I suppose.
Yeah, mate, I'm sure you've also managed to find yourself somewhere to catch a wave over there. How far are you from the coast? And I also know that rugby's not your life, right? So I'd be curious to know how much kind of Super Rugby and international footy you watch as well.
Well, the surfing is, mate, of course. I mean, I moved to a team in Japan where I was an hour away from the beach, and I was surfing every week, and I've done the same here, fortunately. The coast is only about 40 minutes away, and Jim would know Blair Connor. I'd say Jim would remember him. He was an old Reds player. He's been in Bordeaux for 10 years now. He retired last year, but yeah, he's a good mate of mine, and he's got a house down near the beach, so we surf all the time. And yeah, it's I still get to the coast. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, he's one of those crazy characters, Blair. I think he's still got the eagle tattoo on his body somewhere from playing with Humble North's rugby club in Brisbane, and he's one of those guys that found French rugby or overseas rugby, and that was his avenue to a professional career. And he's had a brilliant career over there, a bit like Brock James, who didn't quite have as much Super Rugby as he wanted, but he's a legend in France. So great opportunities if you can find your home somewhere around the rugby world.
Mate, that's a nice segue. We're running out of time, so we'll need to wrap up shortly, but a nice segue, Jim, into the Queensland Premier Rugby Grand Final this weekend, with East taking on UQ, who are looking to go back-to-back. And also in the Shute Shield, you've got Gordon taking on Eastwood, and a couple of old teammates of Higgers running around this weekend playing some club footy. Benny Moen, of course, at Easts, and Jed Gillespie at Eastwood playing his last game before he hangs up the boots. Jim, you've been covering the club footy for rugby.com.au. Can you talk us through just quickly what you're expecting from those matches?
Well, I guess the script in Brisbane is Ben Moen, 35 years old, only came back this year really to fill in that one jigsaw piece, which was win a club premiership, and he's brought everyone along for the ride. So that's a brilliant storyline. He'll retire no matter what after Sunday. So Tigerland, they've got 5-6 teams into grand finals, won the club championship. So the script says East to win, but University of Queensland are just a quality side. So it should be a great grand final Sunday at Ballymore, and very much the last grand final in this old Ballymore configuration, because they're going to knock down the McLean stand next year and transform it into a new high performance centre with a different sort of pavilion / grandstand. So quite a momentous day on Sunday. Looking at the Shute Shield, no Sydney University in the grand final. That's probably one thing to say. And you've got this great story with Gordon, who haven't won since 1998. So Darren Coleman's done wonders there for that club, and got great value out of Rod Iona at fly half. But also look at the back row: Jack Dempsey, Tom Silk, James Luff, 3 local juniors from Gordon. So they really are up for it. And then in the Eastwood camp, run by Ben Badger, they've got a young kid, Tane Edmed, who is only 20 years old, probably the best ranger 5'8" in Australia already, seeing they're such a rare breed. But he's a really nice player who's can create a bit of history for Eastwood. So a really good grand final there. Neighbours are only about 10 k's apart in Sydney, so that'll be a fairly fierce local derby grand final at Leichhardt Oval on Saturday.
Yeah, and of course, Darren Coleman, after that, he heads over to Major League Rugby in the US, where he's part of the Los Angeles Giltinis with Stephen Hoyles in the coaching staff, Adam Fryer as GM of rugby. Because before we let you go, surely Hass has been on the phone asking you about a move over stateside.
He hasn't. I did not know he was going to the LA team as well, but that's interesting to know. I'll have to give him a call, see if I can get a gig.
I think there's a bit of chat that Matt Giddo might be heading over that way as well. So there'll be some good people having some good fun over in Major League Rugby. Higgers, great to catch up with you, mate. Fantastic to hear that you're staying sane within the pandemic and that you've made the most of some family time, and awesome to chat some footy with you, and hopefully grab a coffee or a beer with you next time you're back in Brisbane. Jimmy, mate, your work for rugby.com has been sensational, telling the narrative pardon me, of those club rugby competitions as they draw towards a conclusion. So we'll certainly be watching those with interest, and we might have to call one of Higgers' mates to jump on this podcast with us next week as well. We'll see what Mikey Harris is doing. But fantastic to have you on the show as well, and really appreciate it. Fingers crossed the Wallabies get a win this week, and we're heading into the match at Suncorp next weekend, trying to win the Bledisloe Cup. How good would that be? But thanks very much to both of you. And look forward to catching up soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
we'll just get 2-year-old Aubrey Higginbotham back on the tech skills over in France, mate. We get Higgers back again.
I can't get him off the phone. That's the problem.
Fantastic to catch up, fellas. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. This has been the best on-ground Bledisloe banter, something a bit different. And as I say, we'll do something same time, same place next week. See you then.